Have you ever, just stopped and wondered not just how the universe works, but really,
Mm.
why is there anything here at all?
It's the ultimate question, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
what came before the Big Bang, or even before the laws of physics, the really basic rules.
Yeah, where did those come from?
Exactly. So today, we're putting on our investigator hats, maybe. We're diving into a really radical new paper that tackles these huge questions.
Sounds fascinating.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're looking at the principle of least genesis, a pre-dynamic foundation for physical law by Philip Lilien. It just came out July 2025.
A very fresh perspective, then.
Very fresh. And look, this isn't just about how stuff moves around in the universe. It's about how the universe itself emerges from, well,
Mm.
from something incredibly fundamental.
From potentially nothingness, or at least pre-physical potential.
Right. The paper proposes this new kind of meta-principle, something even deeper than the principle of least action, which is already pretty fundamental in physics.
That's a big claim. Least action is a cornerstone.
It is. So our goal today is to give you, our listeners, a clear path into understanding this potentially groundbreaking idea, hopefully spark a few aha moments about, existence itself.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's start with that familiar ground. The principle of least action, or PLA. If you've dabbled in physics, you've probably heard of it. It's super elegant, very powerful.
It really is. It basically says that systems follow the path that minimizes or extremizes something called the action. It tells us how things move, how they evolve over time.
Like a planet orbiting a star, or light bending around gravity. It works beautifully for describing those paths.
It does. But here's the crucial thing the new paper points out. What does the principle of least action already assume?
Okay. What does it assume?
Well, it assumes you already have space, you already have time, you have a system, particles, fields, whatever, with defined properties. And you have laws, like the rules captured in the Lagrangian function, that tell the system how to behave.
Right. It needs a stage and actors already in place before it can direct the play.
Exactly. It governs the evolution of things that exist, not the emergence of those things in the first place.
And that is precisely where this new paper jumps in, asking that deeper question. What principle governs the actual origin of the system? What determined the stage and the actors before the play started?
It's like asking, if least action is the recipe for baking the cake, what's the principle that decided there should be flour, eggs, and sugar at all?
That's a great analogy. So how does the paper answer that? This is where the principle of least genesis comes in.
Precisely. The principle of least genesis, or PLG, Lilien proposes this governs the emergence of being from non-being. Or, as the paper puts it, the birthing of phase space itself from coherent singularity.
Okay, coherent singularity, birthing of phase space. Let's unpack that a bit.
The core idea is that reality arises through the path of minimal ontological cost and maximal coherence emergence.
Minimal ontological cost. What does that mean in simpler terms? Is it like the universe being lazy, taking the easiest path to just exist?
Huh. You could sort of think of it that way, yeah. Like water naturally flows downhill following the path of least resistance, the path of minimum potential energy. The PLG suggests existence itself flows into being by minimizing something called coherence potential.
Coherence potential. So maximizing coherence is key.
Exactly. Coherence here means, roughly, order, unity, internal consistency, resonant harmony. Reality emerges in the most efficient way possible, achieving the highest degree of internal coherence as it differentiates itself from this state of pure, undifferentiated potential.
So it's a shift from just describing motion within reality to describing the creation or ontology of reality itself.
It's a fundamental shift, yes. From kinematics to ontology.
Now, the paper introduces something that looks, well, frankly, bizarre at first glance. An equation it calls the seed equation. 0 times infinity raised to the power of 0 equals 1. I mean, mathematically, that's undefined, right? Or at least highly problematic.
It certainly looks that way using standard arithmetic rules. But the paper argues this isn't just playing with symbols. It represents a fundamental paradox-resolving act.
A paradox-resolving act. How so?
Think of 0 as representing absolute nothingness, the void, and infinity as representing unbounded potential, maybe even everything possible. These are fundamental opposites. The 0th power, 0, acts like a kind of unifying or binding operation that resolves the tension between them, resulting in unity, the number one, the first something.
So it's claiming this mathematical paradox actually describes the birth of unity from the tension between nothing and everything.
That's the core idea presented. It's positioned as a fundamental operator in what the paper terms ontological mathematics. It's not just a number game. It's meant to represent a generative act of being.
Okay, and this ties into a broader idea called coherence physics.
Yes. In coherence physics, reality isn't seen as being built from fundamental forces acting on particles in a pre-existing space. Instead, everything space, time, particles, forces emerges from gradients and changes, or bifurcations, in an underlying field of coherence.
Like ripples appearing on a perfectly still pond.
That's a good way to visualize it. Before anything emerges, there's a state the paper calls hypercoherence. Imagine that perfectly smooth, absolutely still pond, maximum symmetry, no features, just pure potential. That's the starting point.
Okay, I'm trying to follow. But how do we get from these sort of philosophical concepts, coherence, a paradoxical seed equation, to actual physics, to math we can calculate with?
Right, that's the crucial step. The paper introduces a new mathematical structure. It's called the coherence functional, usually written as C.
Okay.
And here's the really elegant part. It's defined as C equals A plus LD.
Whoa! Okay, so I recognize the second part, hell LDT. That's the action from the principle of least action, right?
Exactly. That represents the evolution within being, the dynamics we already study. The new piece is A omega. This omega term represents the origin of being. It's the pre-dynamic generative structure that actually brings reality, the phase space, into existence.
So C combines both the creation part, A, and the moving around part into one single thing.
That's the unification proposed. A itself is derived from that seed equation we talked about, 0, 0, 1, and other related coherence constants.
Coherence constants, like fundamental numbers related to emergence.
Kind of. The paper mentions things like 0, 0, 1, which here symbolizes that self-emergence from nothing, and 0, 1, 0 factorial equals 1, representing the concept of forming something, a first countable unit, without any prior action or movement. And something called C, the infinite coherence constant, representing that boundless generative potential we started from.
Okay, so A bundles up all these origin concepts, and the action term handles the dynamics once things exist.
Correct. And the absolute core of the framework is the unified variational principle, DS, minimizing or extremizing this entire coherence functional C.
So D0, that single equation, is proposed to govern both the birth of reality and its subsequent evolution.
That's the claim. It's a principle that governs both ontology and dynamics together.
That's huge. How does that structure work? Is there a sequence?
The paper lays out what it calls an ontological dependency chain. Think of it like dominoes falling, each step enabling the next.
Okay, walk me through it.
It starts with the seed equation. This act of resolving paradox creates fundamental unity. This unity then informs the structure of the origin functional, dia, which encodes how coherence generates reality.
Got it. Seed leads to omega.
Then, from LS, phase space emergence happens. This is where the dimensions, the fields, the basic variables of our reality are defined. The stage is built.
Okay, so space and dimensions come from omega.
Yes, and only after the phase space exists can you define the Lagrangian, L, which contains the rules of interaction and motion within that space.
Ah, so the laws come later too.
Exactly. Once you have L, you can formulate the action functional, S equal LDT, which governs how systems evolve over time along their paths. And minimizing S gives you the Euler-Lagrange equations, the specific equations of motion.
So the crucial point is that motion dynamics, the stuff PLA deals with, can only even be defined after this prior process of coherent emergence via omega has happened.
That's the essential idea. It completely flips the usual perspective where we assume space and laws exist first. Here, they are emergent properties.
Now, physics loves its extremal principles, right? Least action we've talked about. There's also maximum entropy in thermodynamics, minimal surfaces in geometry. How does this principle of least genesis fit in with those? Does it replace them?
That's a really important question. The paper doesn't aim to replace them, but rather to place them within a hierarchy. It proposes the principle of least genesis sits at the very top.
Okay, so level 1.
Level 1. The principle of least genesis, D. Its job is ontological emergence. It's the most fundamental selector. It determines which reality emerges, the dimensionality, the fundamental laws, the structure of phase space. It's the meta-selector of being.
Wow. Okay, what's level 2 then?
Level 2 is our familiar principle of least action, D0. Its domain is physical dynamics. It governs how things move within the phase space that PLG selected. It presupposes the existence of space, time, and laws that came from level 1.
Makes sense. It takes the output of level 1 and runs with it. And level 3.
Level 3 is where you'd place something like the principle of maximum entropy, entropy extremum. Its domain is thermodynamics. It governs statistical distributions of states within a system that's already evolving according to level 2 dynamics in a space defined by level 1. It's secondary, only becoming relevant once you have dynamics and a space to work with.
So it's a nested structure. Least genesis picks the universe, least action runs the simulation within it, and maximum entropy describes the statistical trends of that simulation.
That's a pretty good summary, yes. The key concept is meta-extremization. Least action finds the optimal path through space, but least genesis finds the optimal structure of space itself to emerge.
That is genuinely mind-bending. I can imagine some physicists raising an eyebrow at redefining things so fundamentally.
Oh, absolutely. Any theory proposing such a deep shift would and should face intense scrutiny. But the paper attempts to ground it in a mathematical framework, which is essential.
What are some of the biggest implications if this framework holds water? You mentioned emergent spacetime.
Right. Space-time isn't the fundamental backdrop anymore. It's a coherence projection from that deeper reality described by A. The Lagrangian, the rulebook for dynamics, only gets written after this projection happens.
And fields, like electromagnetic fields, gravitational fields.
Those are described as bifurcations, like branches or splits within a primary genesis field, which the paper calls phi. Everything we see emerges from the behavior of this underlying coherence field.
So it's like everything, particles, forces, space, are just different kinds of ripples or patterns in this one deep generative ocean of coherence.
That's the picture it paints. And it aims for a massive unification, bridging domains we usually keep separate.
How so?
Well, physics becomes the study of coherence dynamics, not just forces. Metaphysics, the philosophical study of being, potentially gets a formal mathematical grounding in make. And even pure mathematics might be seen as reflecting the resonant structures of coherence itself.
A unification of physics, metaphysics, and maybe even mathematics. That's incredibly ambitious.
It is.
So does this framework offer answers to those ultimate why questions? Like, why is there something rather than nothing?
It attempts to, for why something rather than nothing. The answer points back to that seed equation. The idea is that the resolution of this fundamental paradox necessitates the emergence of unity, of something. Existence becomes an unavoidable outcome of resolving the tension between nullity and infinity.
Okay, and what about why these laws of physics? Why the specific rules we observe?
The framework suggests they aren't arbitrary or externally imposed. They are projected constraints that arise naturally from the structure of the origin functional A. They are consequences of how coherence had to manifest to become reality, selected by day.
So the laws are baked in by the process of emergence itself. What about time? What is time in this picture?
Time is described not as a fundamental dimension we move through, but as a modulation of coherence reduction, perhaps like the rhythm or rate at which the universe unfolds or differentiates from that initial hypercoherent state.
And basic properties like mass or spin or electric charge.
Those are interpreted as phase curvatures and quantized defects within coherence tensors.
Okay, let's break that down. Coherence tensors, like mathematical objects describing the coherence field.
Right, and phase curvatures might be like little warps or twists in that field's phase, giving rise to properties like mass. Quantized defects could be like tiny, stable imperfections or knots in the coherence field, manifesting as fundamental charges or spin.
So particles and their properties are just specific, stable patterns or glitches in the coherence field.
That's the interpretation offered, yes. It reinforces the idea that everything, including the laws and constants of nature, is emergent.
And the fundamental constants like the speed of light c, Planck's constant ρ, the gravitational constant g.
Those are seen as eigenvalues of coherence quantization. Basically, they are the specific allowed values that pop out when the fundamental coherence quantizes, when it settles into stable forms. They're inherent parameters of the emergent structure.
So this really redefines the whole quest for a theory of everything. It's not just about unifying forces anymore.
Not primarily, no. The goal shifts. It's less about reducing all known forces to one superforce and more about revealing the generative origin of force and interaction itself.
Finding the source code, not just simplifying the existing code.
Exactly. All physical properties, space, time, mass, particles, forces, are described in terms of coherence, as projections, directions, curvatures, vortices, deviations within that fundamental coherence field.
Leading to that bold statement you mentioned earlier.
Yes. Coherence is not a property of the universe. It is the universe. It suggests coherence isn't just in things. It is the fundamental substance or process from which things arise.
Wow. Okay. So wrapping this up, the principle of least genesis is a truly profound rethink. It's not just about how things move, but why there's anything here to move at all. It starts before existence, defining the rules for reality itself to emerge, unlike standard physics, which usually starts the clock after existence is assumed.
That's the core shift. It's asking the pre-dynamic question.
It is a lot to process.
It definitely is. And it leaves you thinking. If laws themselves are emergent, products of this coherence process, what does that really mean for our search for ultimate, unchanging truth? Could it be that the deepest answers lie not just in physics, but at the intersection of ontology, physics, and maybe even consciousness, all unified through coherence?
That's a powerful thought to end on. It certainly gives you, our listeners, plenty to chew on.
A lot to contemplate.
Indeed. We really encourage you to sit with these ideas, mull over this principle of becoming, maybe even revisit parts of our chat today. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.